Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation podcast, where we discuss the exciting innovations that lie ahead for organizational ground transportation. Each episode, we cover topics tailored to those resolving transportation-related challenges and provide tips, tools, and trends that will inspire you to stay ahead of the curve. And now, here's your host, Daniel Perez.
Welcome to the Future of Ground Transportation. Today we have a special guest, MassCEC, the Clean Transportation Department, with Rhys, Webb, and Eli Sinclair. Thank you guys for joining us tonight.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So before we get started, why don't you guys talk a little bit about MassCEC? What do you guys do? What are your roles and responsibilities? So that way we could give a little bit of context to the audience.
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in. So MassCEC, we're a quasi-public state agency. And so what that means is that while we don't set any policy, we're not a regulatory body, we are publicly funded. We are an economic development agency. And so really our dual goals are to accelerate the clean energy and the climate tech economy in Massachusetts, and also to decrease greenhouse gas emissions. And so we do that in a pretty broad array of ways. We've got a workforce development team, and so they're really focused on training and upskilling the workforce that'll be needed to support a clean energy economy. We've got an emerging climate tech team, so they're focused on investments and grant funding for early stage companies to really make sure that we are keeping or attracting, that brain trust in Massachusetts who are working on these more innovative issues. We've got an offshore wind team as well. So they do everything from research all the way to deployment of offshore wind technologies. And then where Elijah and I sit, we are on the clean transportation team, which is under the umbrella of accelerating decarbonization. And what we try to do on the accelerating decarbonization team is really to accelerate these markets and to break down the barriers to these new technologies and make sure that we have all of the business models, the technologies, the partnerships that we need to make these industries successful. So we do a lot of grant programs for pilot and demonstration projects. And really, I think MassCEC's role in the state is to be that innovative body. And so whether innovation is technology, whether it's public-private partnerships, whether it's a program structure, we kind of take all of those learnings and we try to communicate those externally, both within Massachusetts and outside of Massachusetts, so that all of these initiatives can be replicated and scaled either by, state agencies or utilities, the private sector, whomever, just again, to make sure that we're really accelerating these markets.
And for a little bit of context, how did you guys get started within the MassCEC?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. So when I was in college, I got an internship with MassCEC, or MassCEC funded an internship. And that opened my eyes to just clean energy, which was a pathway I wasn't originally considering. And then I guess years later, I saw an opportunity open up on the clean transportation team. I'd been doing work in the energy industry for 3 or 4 years at that point. And I was really, really excited because MassCEC had made such a big impact on my life. And, transportation is like 37% of our emissions in Massachusetts. So it felt like a really awesome opportunity to be able to make a really big difference in decarbonizing.
Perfect. Thank you. How about you, Rhys?
Yeah, funny enough, I'm kind of the same. I was in a MassCEC internship position at Green Energy Consumers Alliance, so actually with Anna Venderspec, who I saw that you had on. She's awesome. But learned about MassCEC through that. And I joined about 5 years ago. I was working on clean transportation and some of our grid work. Transportation was a new program area for us in 2020. So we only had one program going. We're now up to, I think, 13 different programs. So it's been really cool to watch it grow and help kind of shape the direction of it.
Awesome. All right, so let's get these parties started. What programs for all the transportation operators, bus companies, trucking companies that are listening to today's program should they be aware of that MassCEC has available for these companies, especially on the heavy duty side?
Yeah, I think our big one is it's the Mass Fleet Advisor program. So it's provides free technical assistance to medium and heavy duty fleets in Massachusetts. And um, we like to take credit because it was the first in the nation, and it's kind of the one program that California got from us and not the other way around. Um, but we worked really closely with National Grid and Eversource, who both have fleet advisory programs, but only for public fleets in their territories. And so we wanted to fill that gap for the private sector and also for public fleets that are in municipal light plant territories. So, it's really cool that every fleet in Massachusetts has access to free fleet electrification planning through one of those three programs. And so the eligibility criteria for the program is just that you have at least 3 vehicles, and one of them is Class 2B or above. Um, and what we do, we are working with CalStart, who's a transportation nonprofit. They're our administrator of the program, and they will work with fleets to do some intake forms. How many vehicles do you have? What types? Where are they domiciled? And then they'll take all of that information. They'll do an on-site assessment as well to really figure out, do you have the electrical capacity for charging stations? What would you need to do to have the electrical capacity for charging stations? And we provide data loggers as well. So, we'll send out data loggers for fleets to install for 4 weeks so we can get all of that route data pretty easily. They don't have to, figure out their telematics or send us anything manual. Um, and we take all of that information and we put it into an electrification report that's really tailored to each fleet that says, here are the vehicles that you should be or you could be electrifying right now. Here are the models you could be switching to. Here's what the estimated total cost of ownership would be. The results of the site assessment. Where should you put charging stations? And it's no cost, and it's also no requirement to make any purchases. So, if a fleet sees it and thinks awesome and they want to move forward, great. If they are not ready, that's also totally fine. And for those fleets that do want to move forward, we have a procurement phase as well. So we will help them through the delivery of an electric vehicle. So that includes doing some workforce training. So we'll train their mechanics and their drivers on how to operate the vehicle. We'll do some standard operating procedures with them. We can help with incentive applications. We can connect them to dealers or charging station manufacturers. So really trying to get them to the point of being comfortable with the vehicle that they purchase.
Got it. So there's a couple of questions. So for a company that has 3 vehicles or more, they qualify. You mentioned Class B, but actually for context, what do you mean by Class B? Sorry.
Yeah, Class 2B or above. So basically anything bigger than, a pickup truck. So step vans, some of the larger pickup trucks will qualify, but yeah, any of those medium or heavy duty vehicles. It's more so that the smaller light duty vehicles don't count towards that one vehicle that is a medium heavy duty vehicle. But if you do have those in your fleet, we can analyze those as well.
Got it. So besides the assessment that CallStar provides, is there any specific grants that the fleets will qualify for so that way they could start transitioning to electrical vehicles?
Yeah, so not at MassCEC, but there is the state More EV truck program. So Mass offers rebates for electric vehicles. They have funding. It's $7,500 all the way up to $90,000, depending on the class of the vehicle. So we really wanted that program came out first, and we saw that the uptake was fairly low. And so we wanted to make sure that fleets were ready to take advantage of it. So we see our program as kind of that bridge between fleets and funding opportunities. So like the state More EV truck program. We also assisted some fleets in applying for some federal funding through the EPA in order to purchase electric vehicles. So, anytime that we see those funding opportunities come up, we now have this network of fleets that we can call on and say, hey, this is available. If you're interested, we can help you with this.
Got it. Thanks for the context. I mean, based on my experience as an operator with 100 vehicles and feedback that I received from other operators and from clients that we're working with right now, as we transition from regular combustion engines to electrical vehicles, is the cost of entry. So, like, what have you guys experienced so far on the cost of entry? I know that a typical vehicle that we acquire for $100,000 when it comes to electrical vehicles is $300,000. So, like, how do you guys, what sort of challenges are you guys seeing on that cost of entry? And how do you foresee sort of that cost of entry mitigation for fleets?
Yeah, I think that's a huge barrier. Within our electrification reports, it's often the case that we'll do a total cost of ownership analysis over 12 years or 15 years, and we'll say this is going to be more expensive. Like your fuel costs are not going to offset the upfront cost of this vehicle, and so we're very upfront about that. Um, we're seeing a lot more success in the medium duty space. So, vans, box trucks, things like that, they're much more on par affordability wise. And I think that they're helpful entry level sort of test cases for fleets. So, we're not advocating that anyone goes out and replaces their full fleet all at once. It is baby steps. And so if you can test out a smaller vehicle, a box truck, a van, then you still get those learnings of like, what is this going to take? How is my operation going to differ? How's my duty cycle going to differ? How can I use, demand charging, managed charging, and make sure that I'm charging this at the right times? And so I think that those smaller test cases can be really useful for fleets. But yeah, the upfront cost is difficult. So that's why we try to stay as up to date on all of the funding opportunities as we can.
Appreciate it. It sounds like you guys are working on that roadmap as well. So appreciate that. What are the most common challenges that you guys are seeing as folks continue to transition to the electrical vehicle space?
Yeah, Elijah, I've been talking a lot, so I don't know if you've got thoughts on that.
Sure. Yeah. So I think we're running a program right now called Ride Clean Mass, and it's helping Uber, Lyft, and taxi drivers electrify their vehicles. So we provide some incentives for new and used vehicles, and also some shorter term incentives for rental vehicles. And, when I talk to drivers, I think the two big things that come to mind are range anxiety. They're concerned that they're going to have to charge in the middle of the day, and it's going to, it's going to be like a bad use of their time. And also just access to charging infrastructure. So I think part of what, we're doing is we are, giving them the opportunity to try driving an electric vehicle. And I think in many cases, the range of the existing electric vehicles does meet the needs in the light duty space of like Uber, Lyft, and taxi drivers. I was speaking to a Lyft driver and a representative from Lyft actually, and they said drivers typically drive 230-ish miles a day or something like that. And most of the EVs have around a 300-mile range. So, getting drivers in cars, that's why we're running this program, because we do think that there are good experiences that will be had if people do try these cars out. And we're coupling that with a program to help create charging infrastructure specifically for these drivers to help kind of assuage some of those worries and, create these positive experiences. Because if they don't have a good experience, that's counterproductive for the program. So it's really, really important to us that we're talking to them and creating positive experiences. But also curious, Rhys, I'm sure you have some insight as well. Don't mean to interrupt you, Daniel.
No, thank you. Go ahead, Rhys.
Yeah, I think in terms of medium and heavy duty vehicles, one of the big things that we've seen as a challenge is just timing. So timing between getting your vehicle delivered and getting charging infrastructure in place. I think those can be on very different timelines. So sometimes you've got a vehicle, but you don't have anywhere to charge it because you're still waiting on that infrastructure to be installed. Sometimes it's vice versa. And so I think really trying to marry the two has been a challenge for a lot of fleets. I think that's where planning comes in so that, we can do some of that work ahead of time. But I think on a more high level, education is probably one of the biggest challenges, is just making sure that like this is really technical stuff. And, Elijah and I aren't experts on it either, but I think, we do as much as we can to really get people to a point of understanding the technologies and what their options are. And we're working on some public facing web pages right now for some residential consumers, for a commercial and private ownership audience, and a vehicle dealership audience, to really make sure that we are, as the state, are trying to provide as many educational resources as we can.
Correct. That's very well said. So you mentioned some really good points. Charging stations and the charging infrastructure. Can we discuss a little bit about that? So if I'm on the commercial side with a couple of vehicles, sort of what is it that I have to prepare myself for, and how does that process work?
Yeah, I mean, what we hear all the time is like engage your utility early and often. They really, if you're going to be installing a lot of charging infrastructure, they need to know pretty early on that that's going to be happening. And so what we do through Mass Fleet Advisor is we'll do that on-site assessment. And so we'll figure out, okay, maybe yes, your facility can support charging infrastructure right now, or it can't, and you're going to need, a new electrical panel, or you're going to need a new transformer. What is it going to take to get you there? And we are finding that most facilities need some form of electrical upgrade. Sometimes it's pretty minor, sometimes it's pretty major. So I think that's really the first step, is to figure out where you're at and what you're going to need to make those next steps. And our program will also recommend, what level of charger you'll need, whether it's level 2 or level 3, based on, your vehicle's duty cycle. So we can make those recommendations as well. But yeah, I think the utility piece is really central.
Got it. Thank you, Rhys. And from the utility piece, does MassCEC provide grants and infrastructure costs too, or is that most on the consumer to make sure that they invest on all this equipment before they purchase any electrical vehicles?
Yeah, I can speak to Mass Fleet Advisor, and then Elijah, if you want to talk about some of our charging station work. But Mass Fleet Advisor doesn't provide any funding for vehicles or infrastructure, but we can connect people to utility programs. So like their Make Ready program has funding for some infrastructure. There's some state programs as well. So I think really what we do is sort of show people where they need to be looking for that funding, even if we're not offering it ourselves. But some of our other programs do offer funding for charging infrastructure.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, we have 4 newer programs, or programs that are launching in the next few months, that are focusing on largely more emerging forms of charging infrastructure. Because again, like MassCEC, we're someone that does a lot of deep pilot type work, proving the use case. So those 4 areas, we have one program that will be focused on-street charging, one on mobile charging for medium and heavy duty vehicles, one, which I'm working on vehicle to grid and vehicle to everything demonstrations, and then one for the vehicles for hire for the Uber, Lyft, and taxi drivers that I mentioned earlier. And so, each one of those programs will be open. We definitely recommend any commercial or any other people listening to check out our website or get in touch with Rhys or I, and we're glad to talk about those programs with anyone who reaches out.
I mean, Elijah, do you want to take a couple of minutes to sort of break down the programs that you're currently working on, and provide a little bit of education on those programs, and same on your side, Rhys? You want to do that?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start with the one I'm running, and then Rhys is running 3 of those, or in charge of 3 of those charging programs. So I'll let her take those ones on. But the vehicle to everything program. So in case listeners aren't familiar, vehicle to everything in this case is vehicle to grid, or vehicle to building, really, or vehicle to load. And so basically, each electric vehicle has a great battery, a big battery, and it could send that electricity back to the electric grid, or back to your home, or to power a different load. So if we do that at strategic times, we can avoid building power plants, or we can avoid using power plants that are releasing lots of emissions, or we can save a lot of money on electric bills. I know electric bills have been crazy this year. So there's a lot of really strategic uses for the energy from those batteries. And the program we're running will be installing all of the infrastructure for the either the residential, commercial, or school bus entity that is interested in piloting this technology. So all the EVSE, in some cases electrical upgrades, and also providing all the planning and support services for creating future plans. How is it going to operate in the future when we're not here? And in the end, providing a roadmap for how everyone can do it based on the experiences that we have in this program.
Okay.
Yeah, and like Elijah said, these programs are open now. So if people are interested, please get in touch with us. I think in addition to the vehicle to everything, the V2X program, which does have that commercial focus, the other program we're running that's more commercial focused is a mobile charging station program, or a non-grid tied charging program. So one of the findings from Mass Fleet Advisor is that a lot of fleets don't own their facilities, or they lease them, or they know that they'll be moving soon, so they don't want to or don't have the authority to install permanent infrastructure. So we're going to be piloting some mobile charging options for fleets, so that application is open right now if anyone's interested.
Oh, it is open. Okay.
It is. Yep.
I love it. So can we educate a little bit of the listeners what the mobile charging stations are, especially for the folks that might not be familiar with? I know I saw the pictures; it looked pretty cool. But if we could just sort of provide a little bit of context of how it works and what is the cost of entry. Again, we might not have exact numbers, but at a high level, I'm not sure if you have a little bit of the cost or the infrastructure and what is required and how do we qualify for those.
Yeah, definitely. So when we think of mobile charging, we essentially think of anything that is movable, transferable, or it could be temporary or non-grid tied. Could also be sort of semi-grid tied, flexible charge, things like that. But it can range from, solar powered charging. It could be a bank of batteries. We've seen some as well where they connect to the grid, but they draw a lower amount of power. So anything that really doesn't put a lot of strain on the grid and can be movable is what we're considering mobile charging. And the use cases for us here, like I said, fleets that can't make decisions on their depot, fleets that want to kind of try to right size their infrastructure. We see a lot that fleets think that they need, 10 DC fast chargers if they're getting 10 vehicles when maybe they really need 5 level 2 chargers. So I think those mobile options can sort of help ease some of that tendency for overbuild. Um, and so we have, they're pretty expensive, which is why we're trying to do this as a pilot and de-risk this. We are allocating up to $1 million per fleet. So that will include some funding for the vehicles themselves. If a fleet is interested, but they don't have electric vehicles yet, we can support some funding for that. And then also funding for the infrastructure that they would need. And that infrastructure would be owned by the fleet at the end of the program. So it's not something that we'll, take back or anything. But really trying to get the lessons learned because it is a newer technology.
Got it. Thank you, Rhys. So let me just make sure that I recap what I just heard. So up to $1 million if they qualify for the program.
Yep, we'll be accepting 4 fleets into the program, and so it would be MassCEC pays for the infrastructure. We would pay for a mobile charging for you, and we would support some funding towards a vehicle for you. So we've budgeted about $1 million per fleet, but it's not necessarily that we will, give a fleet $1 million. We'll just pay for the infrastructure.
For the infrastructure, correct. And what's sort of the turnaround time from the time that a commercial operator starts heading in that direction until they actually get the mobile charging station or the infrastructure needed?
So the program will go to the end of 2026. So it'll be up and running by 2026. I think this is the first time we've run a mobile charging program. So we're not sure what the timelines will be. I think that's something that we'll learn. But hoping to have them by the end of this year, or spring of next year.
Awesome. Cool. Let's transition a little bit to the workforce training. You mentioned the workforce training when either operators are looking to train their workforce with this new transition. If you could just sort of educate us a little bit on that workforce training, how does that process look like, and what sort of programs do you guys have out there when it comes to the workforce?
Well, I'll talk about what I know, but Rhys jump in. Rhys has been at MassCEC a little longer than myself. So one thing I'll mention is we do have the Clean Energy Internship Program, which Rhys and I mentioned earlier in the episode, where we fully fund internships for college students and recent graduates who are interested in joining the clean energy workforce. And we generally tend to be pretty flexible with clean energy. So clean transportation, if a company wanted to take on like a new professional, that could be a great opportunity to do so. I know we offer a number of programs which also advise companies and help them scale in the space and connect them with professionals. But Rhys, maybe you have a better understanding of what our workforce team is currently offering.
No, I think that's right. Our workforce team is technology agnostic, so they cover transportation related training, they cover buildings related training. I know we're working with the Automotive Career Development Center, ACDC, which is a mechanic in Massachusetts who's offering training for medium and heavy duty mechanics. So, we fund them to run these trainings. We will also likely be working with the MassCEC Community College to make sure that to help them expand their current diesel training program to include electrification for medium and heavy duty vehicles. That was through a grant through the EPA. And so, and within Mass Fleet Advisor, that training, it'll be some workshops and some one-on-one sessions with these drivers and these mechanics, and also connecting them to more resources for future education. But it's a big gap, I would say, is the training on mechanics, especially.
100%. And is there any specific grants for companies to apply for this sort of programs to get support as they need to train the workforce, or is this coming out of the operator's pocket? How does that work?
Yeah, I think our workforce team, and again, Elijah and I are not on our workforce team, so we're not quite as in the weeds with their programs, but they do run rolling programs for employers and for certain training activities. And so I think, getting in touch with MassCEC and getting in touch with our workforce team, they always have opportunities available to help support that type of training.
Got it. Thank you. So as we transition again to the electrification, what are you guys excited about for the remaining of the year? I mean, we're just getting started, obviously, for 2025 and the remaining years or the foreseeable future. What are you guys are excited about the most as we continue to evolve into more electrical vehicles? And what other programs we might have missed that we haven't sort of educate the audience today?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. There's a lot that I'm excited about. I think like one technological innovation that I've been following very closely is like the development of solid state batteries. I think you're seeing electric vehicles have longer ranges. And I know in China, an electric vehicle with a semi-solid state battery was reaching like around 650 miles or something in that neighborhood. It was projected to reach around that range. We currently have vehicles in the US that are reaching over 512. I think the Lucid Air, which is not necessarily affordable, but still exciting to see that type of range. And Toyota is expecting to, by 2029, have vehicles that are reaching around 900 miles on a single charge.
Wow.
So I think like that type of innovation, like my firm belief is to make the like electric transition happen is that it needs to be like cost effective and it needs to make sense. So I think once we have a 900-mile battery that is, within the believable realm of affordability, or is like saving someone money over its entire lifetime, then we'll reach like the changes that we really need to see across the industry. So that's motivating me. I'm also really excited about commercial micromobility. I won't go on and on because I want to hear Rhys's answer, but I think we just ran a pilot where we were able to replace some local delivery services with cargo e-bikes, and we saw that was led to some serious cost savings and also led to some pretty significant emissions reductions and increases in local employment. So that was really exciting, but I'll hand it over to Rhys. Want to hear her answer as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I think that those are both great answers, Elijah. And Elijah keeps me up to date on all things batteries and tech. So always appreciate his insights. I think I'll take it in a totally different direction. But one of the things that I get really excited about is our some of our more equity-focused programs that we keep pretty open-ended so that communities can apply for the project they want to see versus the project that MassCEC is interested in. So we've got a program called Accelerating Clean Transportation for All, and that provides grants to nonprofits, to community-based organizations, to municipalities, to run a whole array of different programs. Elijah's worked on a lot of their e-bike programs that we got out of that project, and we've also done some consumer education work under that program. This most recent round, we had some applications for Regional Transit Authority, RTA decarbonization. We had some for charging stations, particularly for residents who don't have access to an at-home charger that's a private charger. So people who, are renters or they're in multi-unit dwellings. And so I think those have been really cool and really rewarding to see like what communities are interested in and how we can sort of build capacity and connect them with different resources and different partnerships and make sure that, they're doing the projects that actually work for their community and that their community wants. So that's been really exciting to me.
That sounds amazing. All right. So what let's change the subject a little bit. What are the best business? What is the best business advice you have ever gotten so far? I mean, you guys look really young, so what is the best business advice you guys have gotten so far?
I'll jump in. So when I was an intern at a consulting agency, I was working with my boss. He mentioned to me, do your research and then reach out to people and then like repeat that over and over and over again until you're the expert. And I found that whatever I've done, whether it is, working in consulting and trying to figure out like, the best way to be the expert on something, or if it's even doing my taxes, like that game plan just helps me out no matter what. And I don't know if that's obvious or simple, or if I think it relates to business, but I also haven't like ever owned my own business, not yet. So hopefully that applies, but go ahead, Rhys.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's similar to what I was thinking actually. Mine would probably be just like ask more questions and then, ask the next question. I think it really helped me to realize, I'm never going to be an expert on everything. And so just being open to asking as many questions as you can, I think has been really helpful in opening some pretty interesting conversations.
Yeah, that is very well said. I appreciate what you just said, Riz, because a lot of times, especially as a CEO, I will start making statements based on assumptions instead of asking more questions. And the better the questions, the better the answer. So appreciate you mentioning that. And what is the best book that you guys will recommend, whether it's in business or the ones that have impacted you the most in the last few years?
Yeah, I think one that comes to mind, I read Deep Economy by Bill McKibben a few years back. And he talked about how having local economies, you could really decrease emissions, you could lead to local benefits, you could connect people with their communities. And I thought that was really interesting and also applicable to a lot of the work we do at MassCEC, where we're trying to, especially in transportation, connect people to their communities and help increase their mobility. So I think about that one quite a bit.
Thank you. Russ?
Yeah, one of my favorite books is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. She's a Native American botanist, and the book just talks about, her relationship to nature and gave me a sort of new perspective on it. And I think it helps like ground me when I think about why I'm doing this work and, thinking about that cleaner environment and thinking about, you know, just what I want in a future. So that one's been very close to my heart.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing, bro. And then sort of to finalize this episode, in the essence of the future of transportation, we're always talking in this podcast about, you know, if we were to have the crystal ball, like how do you guys foresee the next 5, 10 years when it comes to obviously moving into the electrical vehicle space, but between autonomous vehicles, flying cars, what comes to your top of mind as we transition from, again, from where we are to 5, 10 years from now? What do you guys foresee on what in your mindset or your horizon?
Yeah, something that I'm interested in getting a bit more into in the next few years is sustainable aviation. So whether that's electrification of more regional flights, or if it's sustainable aviation fuel, or even decades down the line hydrogen. So I think that there's so much opportunity in the aviation space that MassCEC hasn't really worked in yet. So I think that's going to be a big one for us coming up. And it's sort of like we've done or we've started the work on a lot of the easier stuff, the light duty vehicles, those are pretty simple, but something like aviation where the lifespan is 20 or 30 years, you have such a small opportunity window to change those vehicles. So I think it's a huge challenge, but it'll be a cool challenge to work on.
That's very well said. And before we transition to Elia, you mentioned hydrogen. Um, a lot of the conversations that I have with Fortune 1000 companies and transit agencies is that right now we're in this wave of electrical vehicles, but do you guys foresee any sort of interruptions or disruptions with a new sort of, hydrogen or other alternatives that it might be changing the whole course from electrical vehicles to the new wave of X? I don't know what that X might be, but I don't know how this new wave of electrical vehicles will last for. So I'm not sure if you guys have any sort of context from that perspective, or what do you guys anticipate from your perspectives?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I'm not sure, Rhys, if you've done more work with hydrogen. My sense is that there will be specific use cases for hydrogen vehicles and other fuels, and specific use cases for electric vehicles. And that as we approach decarbonization, we need to understand where each one fits best. And also, I totally expect there to be some like major strides that happen in each one of those technologies over the next 5 to 10 years, which will help us, paint a clear image of what that's going to look like. So I don't have a crystal ball necessarily, but my like foreshadowing answer was going to be like in the next 5 to 10 years, I think we'll see just like an exponential all at once type of like change to decarbonized vehicles. And that it's going to still feel slow for maybe 5 years, but maybe 2035, we will, everything will happen all at once. But yeah, Rhys, also curious if you have any other insight on hydrogen vehicles. I know you've done a bit of work with them.
Yeah, no, I feel similarly, Elijah. I think, it will likely be a better use case for the larger vehicles, the long haul tractors, things like that. But I think anything in the light duty, I think electric is a really appropriate use case for those. So I think that's another area that MassCEC is going to get into is the hydrogen space. Our Net Zero Grid is working on some hydrogen studies right now. So I think we'll see some of that upcoming.
Got it. Got it. Perfect. So, how can the listeners contact you guys? What would be the most appropriate way to contact you guys? Um, where can they get access to all of these resources and go from there? Yeah, you guys want to start? Rhys?
Yeah, I think email is probably the best way to contact me at least. So happy to send you, Daniel, my email, and feel free to
Yep.
um,
We'll
send that out.
email that for sure on the episode notes.
Great.
Same for yours, Elias. Is there any specific? I know you oversee. I mean, you guys are both program managers, but is there the specific sectors that you manage so that way folks will know what to contact you for?
Yeah, I work more on our medium and heavy duty space. So I haven't done anything medium heavy duty. You can come to me. Elijah and I both do light duty and charging station, but Elijah does all the micro mobility. So that's sort of the breakdown, I would say.
Got it. And Riz, before we wrap things up, anything that we didn't cover more on the larger side vehicles that we should cover? I know we talk about grants, infrastructure, cost of entry. Anything else that will benefit the audience to get educated on?
Nothing that's coming to me. I think we covered a good portion of it, and I think if they're still interested, the MassCEC Advisor Program is a really great free resource. So if they want to get into the weeds on it, that's the place to do that. But yeah, I think we covered everything. But Elijah, any last thoughts from you?
I'll just mention we love talking with companies who have ideas as well. We are a state agency who's dedicated to running pilots and like helping people figure out what their barriers are to clean transportation and to reaching that decarbonized state. So if there are listeners who are like, I've got this awesome idea and I wish the state or some magic person would come provide me with some, pathway or just some like brain power to help figure that out. That's a role that MassCEC can often help. Maybe not, I don't want to say often, but we would love to help play. So yeah, please reach out if there are great ideas or you want to learn more about any of the technologies or offerings that we have.
Got it. Well, guys, and the MassCEC Clean Transportation team, thank you so much for taking the time to educate our listeners. And most importantly, thank you for what you guys do as we transition into this wave of electrification and providing better carbon emissions to our communities, right? So it's a major impact what we're doing directly or indirectly, right? So thank you all and stay tuned for the next episode. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed the episode and got some valuable insights. If you're curious to learn more, head over to the resource website at dpvtransportation.com, where we got a ton of useful resources and tools for you to stay ahead of the game. And before we wrap it up, I want to invite you to book a free gas emission consultation or a consultation about your ground transportation program with us. Just register on our website is a fantastic way to see how your fleet is doing or how your overall program could be improved. Thanks again for joining us, and we will catch you next time on the Future of Ground Transportation. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Ground Transportation. We appreciate you coming along for the ride. If you found value in this episode and want to hear more, please make sure to subscribe to the show.